But yeah, what I've been spending most of my time with is Pathfinder Kingmaker. Pathfinder is not, I'm using air quotes here, it's not D&D. It's it's D&D. But it's not Wizards of the Coast or TSR or any of that. Back in the
Okay.
day, nobody liked like 4th edition. And
Caves
so
and wyverns.
you nailed it.
Good.
Back in the day for fourth edition, nobody liked 4th edition D&D, so some big old nerds made their own D&D with blackjack and hookers and called it Pathfinder. Um, uh, Pathfinder is, how do I put this? Pathfinder is a person who looked at Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and said, I can't min-max this hard enough. I want more options. And I want bad options. One of the weirdest things I discovered is that one of the creators of the Pathfinder system was like, there should be bad choices in character creation. And you should be punished for making them. That's what makes the good choices feel good. And I'm like, okay. So I don't know if you remember, but I played Wrath of the Righteous about 6 months ago. And I
I
described
don't.
Wrath of the Righteous as the most character creation nightmare game I've ever played in my life, because it's like page after page after page after page of, do you want this stat, or do you want this alignment, or do you want this whatever? And when you load up Pathfinder Kingmaker, which is a CRPG in the style of a Pathfinder adventure module like a Pillars of Eternity or what have you, normal difficulty in that game like makes enemies 20% weaker and decreases the strength of their critical hits. And the reason for that is that core Pathfinder, in that Pathfinder using all of the rules, assumes that you are min-maxing your character to the absolute utmost.
Okay. Well,
So
there's something for everyone out there, certainly, and those who want that level have their place to go now. What
yes, they
made
do.
you? What made you decide to go down this road?
What made me go down this road? Somebody had been recommending it to me for years, but as CRPGs come out, they are literally always fucked on release. Even the stablest ones are always kind of screwy, and the more indie the company is, the more screwier it is. Pathfinder had not been getting any. Sorry, Kingmaker had not gotten any patches for like 6 months or something like that. And Mandalore did a video on it, so I'm like, okay, it's done,
Okay.
it's finished. I can go to it. Once you get past that initial hump of how do I make a character, god damn it, it's relatively smooth sailing. Aside from the fact that it has a very weird way of dealing with encounter design. So the way a CRPG will design a level is very similarly to how any RPG would design a level, right? You have you say you have a big open map, and you have a sliding scale of increasingly leveled opponents, or perhaps lower leveled opponents that have a higher difficulty, like all these guys are invisible, blah blah blah. And the gear treadmill will work accordingly, and it's pseudo linear. And as long as you go through it all in a row and do everything, you should be prepared, right? Kingmaker is designed along the lines of its original adventure module, which means you run into issues where you're like, well, I'm beating the shit out of these boars on the main path. This is no problem. What's in this cave? Oh, a level 19 crag Linaworm that I can't hit even with natural 20s and heals faster than I could hit it even if I did. And just total party wipe in a second.
Shouldn't have walked in there. Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't have walked in there.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the negative reviews on Kingmaker's page are, who balanced this fucking piece of shit. You can't go anywhere. Anywhere I go, I get fucking total party killed in a second. And it's like, I get it. The way that it's made now, I will go to areas that I could have gotten to. Like there's one piece of the road that I just didn't get to. I just some forest thicket that I just didn't get to at any point. And I'm going through and I'm insta-gibbing everything on the main path, right? Just wrecking their shit. And then I went off the main path and found something because it was so jacked up over the total zone level that it was actually appropriate for me when I got there. And I got good rewards out of it.
I was gonna say, like,
So,
are there not like enemies around the thing to show you, hey, these levels are starting to get really high?
yeah, but every now and then you turn a corner and a 10 will-o'-the-wisps cease invisibility and hit you with chain lightning 6 times in one round. And your party, like, you can do real time with pause, and you're moving, and you don't see the damage indicator. You just go straight into seeing an enemy, into the fading out for game over.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
it's pretty fucking funny. And you have to be okay with that. That's very old school. That's really, really old school. That, like, yes, no, some areas are going to be vicious and mean and horrible, and you will unexpectedly horribly die. So quick save when you're going into weird places and have your buffs up.
Okay, question, and this is just genre question.
Go for it.
Does Disco count as a CRPG?
Yes, but it has no combat.
Okay, because I was about to say I don't think I've played one, but at the very least, I can definitely say I haven't played any of the Resurgence, because I'm here, you know, all these years of hearing about Pillars and Planescape and Divinity, and you know, like, and I'm just like, yeah, these are all games that have come out since 2014 or
yeah,
so.
No, they were
Wasteland.
hot, and then they died. They died about as hard as a genre can die, and that there was 0 of them for like 10 years. And then they all went whoosh right back.
KOTOR, yeah, okay, no, that counts, I guess.
KOTOR, I would say it half counts. It's definitely pretty close.
Though I mean the camera angle in my brain is much more zoomed out, and the mouse is involved.
Yeah.
You know?
So in KOTOR, there were moments where you could go into a cave on fucking Korriban and just get your shit completely fucking ruined. But yeah, no, Kingmaker, as a CRPG, it's absolutely fantastic as long as you can put yourself in the mindset of like an old school adventure module, because that's what it's based off of. It's based off a really specific old adventure module from the early aughts. And like, a lot of games are long because, how do I put this? A lot of games are long because of their scale, or they're big because of their scale. Like, look how big the map is. Kingmaker has the opposite idea, where it's long and its scale is related to time, which is fascinating to me. So the core of it is that you get a barony, like you get some bandits off your land, and you establish a small little barony, and you have 90 days to establish your barony. In-game days, like D&D rest takes 8 to 16 hours. Traveling takes time, but like, it's still like, I established the barony with 41 days remaining, right? Tons of time. And then the rest of the game takes place over a 5-year period. And that 5-year period is split between the regular CRPG adventuring of going to new areas, doing quests, fighting monsters, etc. And the other, let's say, third of it is governance, and you are handling the kingdom like it was a game of Civ. And you are building things on a grid to up your kingdom stats, and you're sending off advisors to handle problems like a weed infestation or tax collectors from a different state, while also having to like manage and level up your advisor. And it's a whole involved fucking thing.
So there's a calendar.
Yeah, there's a very intense calendar. In fact, the game straight up tells you always get back to the capital on the 1st of the month, because on the 1st of the month, that's when everybody's going to come to you with their bullshit. So I've been like upgrading my barony, and then I'll set everybody like, okay, you, and you all handle these tasks. These tasks will all take 11 days to 14 days for you to do. So I'm out of here. I'm going to go up to the northwest and do the super dungeon.
This sounds
And
a
then
bit
when
like. Go ahead.
and then when I come back, I want this tax situation dealt with, and I want that printing press installed.
Yeah, this sounds a bit like, hey, do you want to play 2 games at once?
It does.
Do
But the
you want
reason
do you want a Warcraft 3 while you hero system?
kind of. But they're split and they're turn-based, and there's no actual, like, there's no in-person time pressure. It's you looking at a map.
Okay.
And the time constraints are generous, which is something I didn't expect. Whenever I get a timer on a game like this, and I'm like, you have 4 days to do this, I'm sweating, right? Just every problem that you get to solve that takes like a week for one of your guys to finish, it has little tabs like should finish by such and such, and it's always like 40 days away. And one of the early quests is you're getting invaded by trolls from a neighboring country. So, like, you better go fix that because people are kind of upset that there's troll raids in their villages. It's like, okay. So I beelined it and found where they're at, and I genocided the shit out of them. There were peaceful options available, but no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No more troll problem. And then the game's quest thing ticked up and said, cool, you dealt with the trolls. Well, that curse on the nearby hill is going to be a problem in a little while. You have 179 days before that becomes a problem. So I guess you'll just have to wait until then. I'm like, okay. That might be the largest timer I've ever been given in a freely directed game. And I'm down to 100 days right now. And I'm scraping like I'm scraping the edges of where my character has laid claim territory. I'm about to head to the super dungeon later. And the way to deal with that is in a situation where you're like, okay, well, I've explored everywhere and I've done everything. What do? I still have 60 days on the clock. Well, upgrading certain things, like upgrading your village to a town or upgrading your regent to a better regent, is one of those things that you have to be present for in your capital, and you have to spend 14 days. And when you click that button, the calendar just starts shooting forward and goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and goes, great, they're upgraded. Here's the things that happened while you were doing that.
Are you spending experience on upgrading combat or governance?
No, they're completely separate.
Okay.
Like the governing thing has its own stats.
Okay. Because that would be ridiculous if you had to split between the two. All right.
So the flow is actually really fun because it's explore around, do quests, yada yada, get called back to the homeland. Okay, you got a problem with, like, literally you have a problem with your sheep. Okay, give the guy his sheep back. Okay, cut the drinking age. Increase taxes. This asshole from 2 towns over wants to kill somebody. No. Okay. Lady comes to you. My child ran away. Okay, good. Fine. I'll find your kid. Set everybody up on their projects. Let's go figure out where the kid is. Find the kid, do the kid quest. Okay, back to the capital. Okay, you shouldn't have embezzled money and you are getting executed. Oh, what's this? You lost your printing press on the road and you have a duel up north and I'm getting nightmares to go up here. Okay, you handle the weeds, handle the mermaids, handle this. Okay, we're out. Off to do that stuff and back and forth and back and forth. And upgrades to the city eventually start paying off, like items like artisans will give you really powerful magic items, or people will pay you for solutions, which you then use to upgrade your characters, go out, claim new areas, which increase the barony. Like, it actually works really well.
Okay.
It's a ton of fun. The only suggestion I would have to anybody who were to play that is put the kingdom management thing on the easiest difficulty possible. It's a separate difficulty slider from the combat. because if the kingdom falls, it's a game over, and if you're really bad at it, you can actually get yourself into a doom spiral.
Oh, you
Where
can't like have your kingdom fall and then you're just back to being an adventurer and then you have to
no,
like fight your way back. Okay.
no, because if you don't have a kingdom, then the next part of the game, which is the undead are attacking your kingdom, isn't going to happen because there's no kingdom.
Okay. You see dice rolls
it's
for
absolutely
everything, right?
great. You can see dice rolls in the battle log. If you see like Valerie hits for 17, you can mouse over it and it'll show Valerie rolled a 20 plus 7 natural attack plus 2 because of her weapon minus the arm.
It means nothing, but I think seeing the dice roll helps you feel like it's a little less bullshit. You know?
But, like, do you mean seeing the dice roll like every time, or being able to see it?
Being able to see it. If I got fucked on something and I can see what the roll was and how it happened, I can be like, okay, fine, versus playing the Vegas digital slot machine that is just running the odds on you.
The for a game that will throw like completely bullshit encounters at you in areas that they have no business being in, being able to see the dice roll is vital, because you will attack God, what was it? I attacked some were rats, right? And I swung with every character and missed 9 attacks in the first turn. And they hit me with a crit on their first hit and like knocked my fighter out. And I'm like, okay, let's mouse over this.
What did you actually do? Yeah.
Many of these people rolled 19s and missed.
Okay.
Which means I can't hit them. He rolled an 8 and crit, which means I need to load my autosave,
get the fuck out,
and leave.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing that's going to happen here for another couple levels. There's nothing.
Versus like he got an amazing roll and yours were all terrible, but this is
maybe I just got unlucky. Maybe I just got really unlucky.
Cool.
Oh yeah,
cool.
Game's absolutely super great. And there's an interesting thing because its direct sequel, Wrath of the Righteous, solved a this is actually like fighting games a lot. Like, unironically, this is like training mode. This is like holding start to pause, right? A while ago, some devs figured out holding start to pause is the better solution instead of just hitting pause and instantly going to the pause, right? Mm-hmm. It's a solved problem. It's not a patented fucking thing. Just do it this way. Everyone will be happy.
Yeah.
Pathfinder Kingmaker came out after Pillars of Eternity, and Pillars of Eternity solved a long-standing RPG problem, which is, I don't know, you might actually remember I talked about this when I was playing Baldur's Gate 2, way back in the day. And that problem is, all right, gang, we're going to be fighting a bunch of high-level vampires. It's going to be a tough one. You throw down Bless, Prayer, Aid on the tank. You throw down Cat's Grace on the Ranger. Throw down Bull's Strength on the Fighter. You hit your Paladin aura. You hit Mirror Image, Shield, Blur, Vanish. You also hit Mirror's Image, Blur. I want a Heroism cast, etc. And those last 1 minute per level of caster. Which means by the time you're done, 2 minutes of the first buff are over.
You have to go back and do it again.
And by the time you're finished fighting like 2 encounters, the buffs are gone and they're per rest buffs. And you're like,
that sucks.
Shit!
That's garbage, yeah.
Pre-fight buffing in D&D 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 3.5, and Pathfinder is terrible.
You're a one-man raid, it sounds like. You're doing the jobs of an entire raid. Yeah,
well, the difference between having all those buffs on and having all those buffs off is the difference between dying and scraping through with no damage. Like, it's crazy. So in Wrath of the Righteous, the sequel to this, they made a system where they're like any one of the special abilities your main character gets is any buff that lasts longer than 5 minutes will now last for 24 hours. That's like, oh, okay. You do it once when you get into the zone, and then it's good for the entire zone. Okay, cool. But Kingmaker doesn't have that. And that's where a mod called BuffBot comes in, where you program into a
Macros?
Unity and you bring up a list and you set characters and go, I want this character to cast this, and this. And you set them all up, and then you can hit Control F10 and hit the execute button, and they all just explode in instantaneous buffs.
Macros, yeah. Okay.
And then what you do is you download the Bag of Tricks mod, which is a cheat mod, and then you scroll down to player buff counter, and then you change the multiply number from 1 to 5, so that a buff that would last 4 minutes now lasts 20. And so, like, is it cheating? Yeah. Do I care? No. No, I don't. No one cares. In fact, the devs realized this was an annoyance and changed it in the sequel. They made it work like the mods in the sequel because pre-fight buffing is terrible. It's terrible.
I mean, I'm thinking of the P3. You cannot control your party members. Difference between
there's
like it's beyond night and day. It's a different video game. It is yeah. The ability to just fully control and do things. Yeah. Okay.
Somebody in the chat asks a good question, which is, how did Pillars fix this? Because I mentioned that Pillars fixed this problem. The way Pillars fixed this problem is really simple. One, buffs are rare and can only be cast in combat, and they're super strong. So, like, there's no, like, because Bless is a spell you would cast in every fight in every D&D game of all time, because it gives everyone a +1 to all their rolls, right? And it lasts for 5 to 10 minutes, right? Yeah, those don't exist in Pillars of Eternity. Instead, the buff you have in Pillars of Eternity is, for the next 30 seconds, you'll gain 10 armor class. They're not to be always on. They're like, I'm about to be fucked.
Go time.
Turn it on.
Okay.
Right? And the second thing, in Pillars 2, they completely removed what's called Vancian spellcasting and replaced every single ability in the entire game with a per encounter ability instead of per rest.
So you don't have to stop mid-fight. Okay.
The thing is, when I'm playing Pathfinder Kingmaker, the Vancian spellcasting system that I've hated my whole life, it makes much more sense in this context. Because in a Pillars of Eternity game, a Baldur's Gate game, etc., when you're rolling through a dungeon, you just want to roll through the dungeon, right? You just want to keep going, and all these buffs are annoyances, right? And running out of Fireball is an annoyance. In Pathfinder Kingmaker, you're traveling between discrete points so often that 9 times out of 10, you have to rest on the way there. The only time you actually ever go, fuck, I'm running out of spells, is when you're 2 layers into a badass dungeon. Which is when that should be a problem. It should be like, oh, we're really deep in here and we don't have that many supplies. Ran out of Fireball because we used it on that. But then you can still rest down there, but it costs... It's like, oh, it makes sense. And it's one of those things, it's like, I always thought that adapting this idea from tabletop to a game was a bad idea. But it turns out the problem was they didn't adapt it hard enough. Because in your classic RPGs like Baldur's Gate or Pillars, there's no travel time. You just click on a button on a map and you're there. And time doesn't pass, so your people don't get tired. And since they don't get tired, there's no reason to rest on its own as a natural thing. And since there's no reason to rest on its own as a natural thing, the only thing you rest for is to get spells back. So it's infuriating. When I'm playing Kingmaker, between every single point of interest on the map, I'm probably going to have to rest once. So what if it's per rest?
So just cheat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say with Pathfinder specifically, never before has a system encouraged cheating more, because the Pathfinder system is inherently unfair to new players. The Pathfinder system is so complex and so easy to make a not that good character, but the game expects you to have made a good character.
Like the idea
That
of you should have the chance to make a bad character is so fucking callous, because like you can then commit to playing and loading and playing and dying and playing with that bad character, not realizing that the problem was step 0.
Yeah. And I can tell you where that comes from, right? That does not come from the game. That comes from the creation of the system. And the issue with that is an old Dungeons and Dragons issue, which is you remember the old way to roll your scores, which is roll it and that's what it is.
When you're making like the giant grid sheet.
The ancient way back in the 90s was you're rolling for strength, roll these 3 dice.
Okay.
And that's it. Right? That then became a best of, right? And then that became roll all your total scores and then assign them. And
right.
then when video games came out,
I remember now. Mm-hmm.
When video games came out, they started back in the Eye of the Beholder system. It was you could random roll it, or you could just put whatever you wanted. And then as time went on, the digital versions were like, here's a total of 28 points, or whatever.
Distribute.
Put them where you want.
Yeah. Okay.
And so on and so forth and so on and so forth.
My introduction in high school, lunchtime D&D was the 3rd edition, where it was the best rolls of a set of rolls,
right?
The ones you're allowed to keep. Mm-hmm.
And the reason why you should be able to make a bad character is because in pen and paper, a bad character is interesting. When you're playing with people and humans, and particularly a real dungeon master who can fudge the rolls and make interesting situations, a dumb wizard can be interesting. Can be.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about Baldur's Gate or Planescape or fucking Icewind Dale, where you have to fight your shit off for 60% of the game time, a bad character is not interesting. It's just miserable.
Also, a DM with a sense of humor, who's like setting things up and playing along with the mistakes. Yeah, that's a huge difference.
So when it's one of those things when they bring over whole, this is similar to the Baldur's Gate 3 thing, where they brought over all the dice rolls completely as is, and the player feedback was like, this is completely goddamn miserable. I fucking hate this. This feels like shit. My regular DM seeing these rolls would fudge it in our favor because it's not fun. But yeah, Kingmaker is I'm having a blast with it. I think it's a more direct sequel in spirit to the old Baldur's Gate games than, say, Pillars even. I'm really excited to beat this and get on to the sequel, because the sequel has the most replay value of any CRPG of all time. Wrath of the Righteous has what's called a mythic path, which is the secondary main quest for your character. And there are 10, and they range from becoming an angelic paladin to becoming a lich or a gold dragon, like the character becoming a dragon. And the whole game accommodating that, like the lich turns the game world into a zombie shithole. Like, just complete. But yeah, no. Kingmaker's great.
One of the biggest sells I feel was when you were talking about Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know where that's at, if that's in a fully released state or not. But
It's so let me tell you, I think I brought this up, but I'll bring it up again. Baldur's Gate 3 is in the early access of Act 1.
yeah,
Act 1 is out, and they're tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it. And when it comes out, I would suggest fucking around with it, maybe, but don't go for the whole thing until a couple patches, because it's always that way, right? Baldur's Gate 1, I'm like, oh, Act 1, cool. And I played it on stream for 2 nights and was like, okay, I'm done, right? That was about 7 hours of play. Apparently, the first act is like 35 hours long. So the first act of the game is currently like a full-length game. And they are like, much like with the Divinity games, they're like overhauling systems and tweaking all sorts of bullshit all over the place. And it has genuinely improved even since the beginning. I don't think even all the classes are in yet.
Okay, still not there. All right.
Like last I checked, Paladin wasn't even in the game. And Paladin is one of those classes that's like, it needs to be there. You need to have Fighter, Paladin, Cleric, Wizard, Ranger, Sorcerer, etc. Right? Like,
and like, I guess I was going to say, like, how does this stack up to the stuff that was doing?
Baldur's Gate 3 is not really a fair comparison. And the reason for that is because Baldur's Gate 3 is money. It's money. It's big money. Every single line of dialogue in Baldur's Gate 3 is animated like a Mass Effect game.
Okay.
And it is like, it's obsessive with its adheration to the rules, in that on your hotbar you have an entire graph for push, pull, jump, sneak, throw, like all the generic physical actions that a player character would be able to do that you can use to interact on everything in the environment. Like, it's almost simulation based. But it's early and it needed work when I played it. Like, what I'm playing in Kingmaker right now, I'm having a lot more fun of than Baldur's Gate 3 when I played that. And a lot of that comes down to the way dice rolls are handled.
Okay.
Dice rolls in Baldur's Gate 3 up until recently were like just the worst, shittiest experience. And Pathfinder Kingmaker is also a Kickstarter game, which is nuts because it doesn't feel like one. It's well put together. It looks good. It sounds good. It runs well. There is one thing though, and I don't know how to feel about this. You ever see like a sequel get an improvement and you're like, I hate that. I hate that genuine, obvious improvement.
I need an example.
So here's the example. You are familiar with the camera angle associated with the genre we're talking about, the CRPG. Looks like Diablo, has in fact confused you for Diablo in the past. In Wrath of the Righteous, they gave you the ability to spin the camera in every direction to get a better view of the 3D environments. Which, when I played Wrath of the Righteous on stream, I was so fucking lost all the time. Because I would spin the camera to look at something, and then I would forget what north was.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Because I have spent decades with this genre where the camera is locked.
Yeah,
it is a static, locked camera. It's something to get used to, but, you know.